Mike.
The 8th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft.
Hey, man, you ready to be a Falcon, bro?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
The Atlanta Falcons select Michael Penix Jr.
Well, there it is.
Wow.
How lucky is Penix? That O-line, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, 2 backs. How lucky is Michael Penix?
Wow. Because in 2 years, Michael Penix will be ready to challenge Kirk Cousins for the starting spot.
I told you he was rising. I didn't know he was rising that high.
This pick was one of the most shocking moves in the draft, especially considering that they had recently signed Kirk Cousins to a lucrative contract as the franchise quarterback.
And if they would have thought there is a chance we're going to draft a quarterback with the 8th pick and then have this be the Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes thing, where we get draft capital back in a year when we trade the quarterback, then they structure Kirk's deal so all the money's still guaranteed, but it's in a way where when we trade him, we don't take the $38 million cap hit. Right, and so they didn't do that, which tells me when they signed Kirk, they did not think they were going to do this, which means it's not a good process.
And the question I keep asking myself is this one of the strangest picks in NFL history, or perhaps one of the most clever moves the Falcons have ever done? And in today's video, I'm going to continue ranking the rookie quarterbacks and giving my reasons of whether Michael Penix is a future superstar or a lifetime backup. But amid the controversy, one bold claim may surface. Michael Penix may turn out to be one of the best quarterbacks from the 2024 NFL draft in the future. Now, at the initial moment he was taken, the pick was puzzling for a multitude of reasons, culminating in the Falcons quickly becoming the laughingstock of the weekend given the strange selection.
I think this is pretty idiotic. You just spent $160 million on a quarterback. You got other holes you need to fill, and you draft another quarterback. You're just going to sit him for 2 years? I mean, I don't know. Maybe Arthur Blank and the boys down there, they think they have the team that can compete to win right away, so they don't need, an impact plug-and-play player. I did not see this coming.
Not a single analyst had them going in that direction, and nobody expected it less than Kirk Cousins.
Whichever one of you called Kirk when you were on the clock and you tell him about it, what's his reaction?
Well, that's a private. We wouldn't share that, and obviously
reactions are pretty private, right?
Yeah.
He got called on the clock, obviously, because it's a sensitive time with the issues of what you got going on. It's never a right time to talk to a quarterback about those things, and reactions are always going to be private when it comes to those things.
I mean, the dude had barely stepped off the plane before his new team drafted an eventual replacement. But through all the slander and mockery, as the dust settled, perhaps the Atlanta Falcons selection made far more sense than the initial reaction to it suggested on draft night. And now look, I'm not saying that Kirk Cousins isn't the quarterback, because he may run the team for now. But what if the Atlanta Falcons, in fact, have drafted the best quarterback to be that successor to him after this year?
Falcons fans, do not be fear-mongered, please. Do not let fear have you convinced that this wasn't a brilliant move. It was a brilliant move because the Falcons are both trying to win now and win later. When so many teams talk about winning now, they're winning now and sacrificing winning later. Think about the Los Angeles Rams. Acquire Matthew Stafford because you want to win now, but you're sacrificing winning later. What the Falcons are doing is both acquiring Kirk Cousins to win now, but then you draft Michael Penix Jr. so that you can win later.
Those confused by the Falcons selection in the first round cited the fact that they're in win now mode. And look, I'm not saying that they should have used it on Penix. They definitely could have used the pick on an elite edge rusher, a cornerback, or even Rome Odunze to add to their wide receiver room. And hell, they could have traded back and accumulated picks while still addressing a key position of need, further contributing to what is an already looking like very talented roster. The Falcons have brought themselves out of a slump in the past couple of off seasons, mainly through clearing up their salary cap so they could spend freely in free agency. That rebuild of the team's contract situation with its players afforded GM Terry Fontenot plenty of freedom in free agency, which he has actively been spending over the past 2 off seasons. Atlanta were one of the heaviest influences in 2023's free agency period. They signed Jesse Bates, David Onyemata, and Caden Ellis to boost the defense, which already had a strong core. Then a year on in 2024, paid out the largest contract of the entire free agency season by inking Kirk Cousins to 4 years and $180 million. All signs are pointing to the Atlanta Falcons thinking that they can win this relatively weak NFC South division. And not only that, but then go on to challenge in the playoffs right now. Just looking around this defense, they have several influential stars, and then they went on to add Kirk Cousins on top of all of that.
Everybody wanted them to do something defensively.
Yeah.
There are no defensive game changers at 8 in this year's draft. So when you look at it, you say to yourself, I need a quarterback for the future.
He walked right into a locker room featuring Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, and Tyler Algier. And the Falcons brought in Rondale Moore and Darnell Mooney to provide even further support for this offense. All of a sudden, this roster looks like it's ready to do some damage. And like I said earlier, with this division looking pretty wide open, it looks like it's Atlanta's for the taking, or at least they think they can dominate everybody in this division. Which begs the question though, if you're in the position to win not only the division, but to possibly contend for a Super Bowl, why the hell did you draft a quarterback at the 8th overall pick? Like, drafting Penix really didn't shake up or add any momentum to this already great starting roster. Kirk Cousins will be the starter, and drafting Penix this early now seems a little bit strange. Well, if the Falcons are going to be a contender for the next several seasons, they're not going to be drafting high enough to select a franchise quarterback for many years. So if you take it that way, honestly, then top 10 picks should be a thing of the past for Atlanta. So if you think of it that way, do get why they maybe selected him at this such high pick. And while you've got one, why not use it to draft the future of this franchise? In Michael Penix, the Falcons may have drafted a future star. And look, many people have clowned the Falcons for taking Penix, but at that moment in time when they were on the clock, various teams were trying to trade up and to go and get Michael Penix. Not JJ McCarthy, not Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr. He was the quarterback teams outside of the top 10 wanted to come and get. The league's brass saw something in him and felt promising enough to warrant a top 10 selection, and the Falcons pulled the trigger. According to James Palmer of the NFL Network, the Seahawks, Saints, and Las Vegas Raiders all attempted to trade up, but it was the Atlanta Falcons that won out. So in Penix, what are they really going to get out of him? Once an Indiana Hoosier, Michael Penix truly broke out after a heavily disrupted college career when he arrived in Washington. The first 4 years in Indiana were littered with injuries and uncontrollable distractions.
Not like he's had them this year. Those are all past injuries that seem to be okay now.
Four times prematurely ended a season for him with these injuries. Okay.
And I'm okay with that because he's medically cleared by my doctors.
By now he's learned.
Yes.
Get down.
Penix tore his ACL 3 games into his very first season in Indiana, cutting his freshman season short and forcing him into a lengthy rehab process. 2 seasons later, he tore the same ACL again and has dealt with dislocated shoulder injuries to both shoulders during his time in college. And to only add more injury to insult, the COVID season played a major role too. But with a fresh start in Washington with former OC and quarterbacks coach Kalen DeBoer gave him a fresh perspective. The two knew each other from Indiana, and when DeBoer took the head coaching job with the Huskies, one of his first recruits was Penix. One of the key reasons DeBoer felt comfortable bringing him to Washington was the completely healthy 2022 offseason he'd had, allowing him to train and develop unbothered by injury or rehab. That alone with what the coach said simply debunks all the injury things that we have been hearing about him. And on top of that, so do the 2 remarkable seasons he put together before entering the NFL. Michael Penix Jr. hit the very peak of his performance with the Huskies, largely thanks to 2 completely clean seasons without missing a game. As far as those working him out were concerned, he's as healthy as any other quarterback in the 2024 draft. With those 2 seasons of opportunity, Penix capitalized. He threw for over 4,600 yards and 31 touchdowns in his first season with the team, and followed that up with an even more impressive 2023 campaign. Not only did he surpass the prior year's totals with 4,906 passing yards and 36 touchdowns, but he led the Huskies all the way to the national championship game in the process. Look, it was one of the finest seasons in Washington football history, and Michael Penix Jr. broke the program's single season passing record in the process. All 3 of his primary receivers were drafted inside the first 3 rounds of the 2024 draft, signaling just how well the football was distributed over the course of the last 2 years. Penix has an incredible arm with a whole highlight reel of deep balls soaring through the air and landing perfectly in the hands of the intended target. Rome Odunze was his #1 target and got drafted inside the top 10 off of the back of a career year between the two. He's 6'3" and almost 215 pounds with all the traits required for a pocket passing quarterback in the modern game. His poise throwing from the pocket emulates stuff you'd be looking for in a pro. Standing tall, surveying the field, never panicking, and hitting his receivers with a volley of elite level throws on a weekly basis. Like with Penix, if you can't get him down, you cannot affect him from the pocket. He simply throughout the whole year did not let pressure phase him, and it was almost impossible to ever knock him out of rhythm. According to a report from CBS, Penix was sacked on just 1.4% of his pass plays in 2023, showing great pocket awareness and an ability to evade sacks when called upon to do so. Like, forget the injury history for just a second. Could this possibly be the best pocket passer in the entire draft? And one quick thing before we start, I wanted to celebrate the recent success of the channel of hitting 13,000 subscribers. So to give back to you guys, I wanted to do a giveaway, and the winner will either get a signed mini helmet or jersey. To enter, simply join the Discord by using the link in the description, as well as following me on Twitter. I highly recommend joining the Discord. We are going to be doing watch parties with little mini giveaways during it all NFL season long, as well as a fantasy league to win some big money too once it gets closer to kickoff. So I'll see you guys over there, but for now, let's get back to the video. Like, as I said before, Drake May has an astounding type of arm talent, but I'd say right behind him, you could even put Penix right behind Drake May. Like, had this dude maybe not been as injured in his college career, he could have been taken before May or even Jaden Daniels at the 2 spot. And when I watched the film on this kid, honestly, I'm astounded by the way he throws. I personally don't like that he is a lefty. That's one concern I do have. But beside that, the dude's release is something that needs to be talked about more, because the ball just comes right out of his hand, and it's like it's watching a left-handed Aaron Rodgers sometimes. He has such a beautiful flick of the wrist release, meaning not only is he going to be able to keep his eyes downfield to find open receivers in the NFL, but he can get the ball out fast and cause a lot of problems for defenses in doing so. Like, besides Caleb, I would say that Michael Penix might have one of the quickest releases in the entire draft. And when you go along to pair that with the arm talent that he does have, it's something to think of that could be possibly dangerous. And look, some people, including myself, better get ready to delete some tweets if this dude does start panning out in the NFL, because the Falcons might have landed themselves a stud. The question now is, though, when might we see him even play? This isn't the first time the Atlanta Falcons have drafted a quarterback who had to sit and wait for an opportunity.
It's about the city. It's about the, I had a lefty, even though he don't run like Michael Vick, but all of those things.
And he gets some hype. They get hyped. Everybody gets hyped.
And this is an owner's pick, right?
In fact, the last time they did so, they gave up draft capital in a trade with the Chargers and moved all the way up to the #1 overall pick. Now, famously, the Falcons selected Michael Vick with the #1 pick in the 2001 draft. The Chargers traded down to 5 and selected LaDainian Tomlinson, who of course went on to be the Hall of Fame running back we all know for that franchise. But on the other hand, we had Vick, who surprisingly had to wait his turn as a Falcons backup quarterback. Chris Chandler was the franchise signal caller at the time, going 6-8 in the year after Vick was drafted. And by the time they were 8-6, Vick finally got his shot, and once he got in the game, that was it. He started 2 games that season, and the keys to the franchise were handed over to him the following year. As funny as it is, Chandler was designated for the 2002 expansion draft, and Michael Vick went on to have some of the most thrilling seasons the Falcons have ever seen at quarterback. He went to 3 Pro Bowls as a Falcon and still holds the record to this day for both the best average career yards per carry and the most rushing yards by a quarterback. And while he did have to wait, Michael Vick finally did get to start those last 2 games of his rookie season. For Michael Penix Jr., unless Kirk Cousins goes through some injury trouble, which we all know he does have, I don't think that's going to be the case for Michael Penix Jr. But that's the best part, is I think it's going to be worth the wait for this kid to sit behind somebody like Kirk Cousins. Like, it's fair to say the Falcons didn't pay Kirk Cousins $180 million to sit as a backup.
I want to wait 3 years. The NFL was now. Now, I know you can plan, but are you trying to tell me that Michael Penix Jr. will be a quarterback that you must have and he'll top any other quarterback candidate prospect that you might have the opportunity to draft. Over the next 3 years, there's a lot of quarterbacks.
Like, I mean, there's got to be a 0% chance that Kirk Cousins does not start for the Falcons. Because I think the only way that he does not start is if for some reason Michael Penix Jr. just turns out to be the left-handed Patrick Mahomes that nobody saw in this year's draft. But I think that maybe is just too much of a stretch to hope for. In reality, I think it's more going to be like 2026, his third season in the league, that we might see Michael Penix finally get to start for the Falcons. Like, if we break down Kirk Cousins' contract, it's a 4-year deal, but the franchise has a viable out after 3 years. That would make it look more like a 3-year, $135 million contract, saving them a small fortune on the 4th season if Michael Penix is ready to go. So during that 3rd year of his contract, I wouldn't be surprised to see some like passing of the torch mechanics from the Falcons and Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins going on there in 2026. And as crazy as it may sound, Kirk Cousins might go in as the backup that season in 2026 to support Michael Penix and give him that supporting cast he needs to develop into that quarterback role. But even that might be waiting too long. Don't forget that Kirk Cousins is fighting his way back from a torn Achilles in his mid-30s. That's gonna take some time, and while he may be ready to go for this season, it could mean that Penix gets some work with the team starters during Cousins' rehab in training camp or even the preseason. Which now begs an even bigger question. What if the kid plays lights out? Like, what if he's just so good, plays flawless in camp, and then just turns heads like Kenny Pickett did last year in preseason? Does he still sit out? Plus, like I said earlier, should Kirk Cousins face an injury, I don't really know if there's going to be a fall off from having Penix go in and start. Like, not many teams will have that luxury of having a solid veteran quarterback starting and then an even solid backup rookie. Like, how many times do we see just NFL seasons just get raptured by just quarterbacks getting injured and then their season just goes completely down the drain with that injury? Like, typically if their starter goes down, it's over. That season is just chalked and they just move on next year.
Now, if you drafted him because you don't know if Kirk Cousins is going to be playing, then I'm going to put that on you. That why did you sign him in the first place? And you're going to wait 3 years. Yes, it worked out for the Packers, but you could have still armed Aaron Rodgers with somebody offensively, a wide receiver.
For the Falcons, having that insurance perhaps felt more important than adding a first-round corner or an edge rusher. Hard to argue with that. Terry Fontenot feels the Falcons are heading down a similar path to that of the Green Bay Packers with franchise quarterback Jordan Love. If any team has developed quarterbacks effectively in the NFL, it's the Packers. With 30 years of Hall of Fame play at the position and just 2 quarterbacks names in the history books over that period of time. Like, Jordan Love looks like he's going to be the real deal, breaking out in what was his 4th season in the league. He started just 1 game in his first 3 seasons, covering for an injured Aaron Rodgers, while spending the rest of that time developing and learning behind one of the greatest to ever play the position. Plus, I mean, in retrospect, Aaron Rodgers fought back so hard against being replaced that he won back-to-back MVP awards in his late 30s. The Jordan Love pick lit a fire under him as a competitor and brought some of the best football out of him in Green Bay. They might not have won another Super Bowl, but Aaron Rodgers had certainly done all he could to get them close. Like, I mean, Jordan Love's 3-year development is unheard of in the NFL. Rookie quarterbacks are often thrust into the lineup as rookies behind a bad offensive line and without talent at wide receiver. A prime example is the 2023 Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young. No talent besides an aging Adam Thielen in an offensive line that got him beaten up all season long. By the end of the year, he looked absolutely defeated, lacking any confidence in facing the heaviest adversity of his life in front of him of the world. For many, the pressure becomes too much to overcome. Conversely, Patrick Mahomes sat a season behind Alex Smith before he took over. Since then, he's won 3 Super Bowls. Like, I mean, just 1 year learning the ropes and getting comfortable in the league could make all the difference. So in Atlanta, sit Michael Penix as long as you want because you are a win now team. Like, even if they do decide to start Michael Penix Jr. at any point in the season over Kirk Cousins, they are still contenders in that weak NFC South division and maybe even contenders to make a run in the playoffs with Penix. Terry Fontenot and head coach Raheem Morris feel that the roster they have right now can win without the introduction of a first-round pick at another position. If they pull it off, they're gonna look like geniuses. Brian Gutekunst was labeled a moron when he drafted Jordan Love. Since then, he's had 2 MVP seasons out of his veteran quarterback, made the playoffs in 3 of 4 years, and reached the NFC Championship game, all while finding the successor to Aaron Rodgers in the process. Those who mocked him then aren't mocking him now. Terry Fontenot has made the defining pick of his career as an NFL GM. In 3 years from now, he too may be heralded as a genius with a Super Bowl ring to even show for it. Overall though, with Michael Penix, I really just sit there and I think about the factors of him being injured and also just being a lefty in the league. We even saw with Tua that when you have a lefty at quarterback, you do have to sit there and kind of get adjusted to that throwing rotation of the ball. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and mark him as a C tier quarterback. I'm going to put him behind Jaden Daniels. I do think that Jaden Daniels is a better quarterback than him. Don't worry guys, I'm not that stupid, but overall it still was a very interesting pick by the Falcons to take their successor right now at 8 overall rather than either trading back or going and getting a defensive guy that they could have, like Dallas Turner or even Arnold that the Lions took too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens now with Penix in camp. But as always, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that Michael Penix is ever going to be a league starter? Is he going to be good in the NFL? Is he going to be terrible in the NFL? Also, down below, let me know what you guys think. What is the Falcons' record going to be? Honestly, for me, I think that they're going to win the AFC South. They have the best roster. They finally got a competent quarterback, or somewhat competent quarterback that's better than Desmond Ridder. So let me know in the comment section below, what do you think their record's going to be? And as always, I will catch you guys in the next one.